You don't need any valid reason. In fact, the fewer reasons you put in your motion of no confidence, the more likely that it will succeed. Because the more you put reasons, then you get caught up in technicalities and your motion might not succeed. And that's the sad thing. I believe that we were a great administration. I believe that we were turning the city around. We could already sense the change in trajectory. Residents could sense it. They tell me every day I run into them. And so, no, it's not a motion of no confidence because we were incapable or we were not focused on doing the job. We were actually doing great, and I had a great team working with me.
702.
The upside of failure.
Sometimes failure is the foundation of greatest success stories.
Well, it's very good to have you with us.
I'm glad.
I believe you were battling traffic outside. Is it just horrendous out there?
Yeah, no, it's quite busy. Busy Friday afternoon.
Okay, and what are you busy with? What have you been up to?
It's gotten quite crazy, actually. So I'm back in medical practice. I'm a general practitioner in private practice, currently in Rustenburg, about to start in Boksburg as well on Fridays. I'm part of a surgical team, a vibrant team of young professionals. We do neurosurgery procedures, so mainly spine procedures, some brain procedures as well. Very exciting work. I will be starting with a vascular surgeon in Boksburg. Quite excited to learn new things.
Okay, so I was going to say, if somebody doesn't know who you are, I'm just going to highlight a bit of your pedigree before we continue with the conversation. You were born 7th of November 1977, a South African medical doctor, politician. You were executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, metropolitan municipality, a member of the DA, served in the position from November 2021 until your ousting and a motion of no confidence in 2023. You're the first woman to serve as mayor of the metropolitan municipality, which was established in 2000, the first black woman to serve as mayor of the city of Johannesburg, and only the second female mayor of the city after Jessie McPherson. That's quite an impressive CV that you've got there. I mean, when you look at that, when you look back at just that part of your life, what do you think?
I think what a shame that we could not sustain such a beautiful legacy. I think what a shame that we could not sustain the hope and the faith that a lot of women in the city and in the country had, that a woman can be trusted with such a difficult task as the task that I had on my hands of turning a city like Johannesburg around in its broken state.
Do you think it's a woman thing? Was that one of the biggest obstacles?
I absolutely do not think it's a woman thing. I do recognize the hope that a lot of women had.
I'm not saying that casting aspersions of a woman having a capability, but do you think that went against you in any way?
Absolutely not.
Not?
Absolutely not. Politics is politics. Even if I was a man, it would have played out exactly
Rough
the
and ready.
same way. Yeah, definitely. It was all about positions. You know, my being male was never going to change people's ambitions for more power. So I don't think it's because I was a woman. Not at all.
And I don't know if you heard about Peter de Villiers, apparently being a relatively naughty boy. There are allegations of sexual misconduct. I mean, it seems when you talk about South Africa's politicians, I mean, there are very few that are not tainted with some kind of dodgy dealings or behavior. I mean, what is it? Is it anathema to other parts of the world? I mean, we know it happens everywhere, but I mean, is it particularly bad here?
Well, firstly, I don't want to comment on the
understandable.
Yeah, I'm a sexual assault care practitioner and an expert witness for the state, and I understand the legal process that goes into determining whether or not a person is guilty, so I'd prefer not to comment at this stage. But I do agree with you that we could do better in terms of the caliber of politician. The fact that I had to go back to medical practice saddens me on many levels. One, the fact that there are so many good potential civil servants out there who are staying in business, in corporate, because they don't want to lose their comfort, their income. The reality is it is a massive sacrifice to leave a business, to leave a well-paying job, to serve in a position such as the positions I've served in the 7 years that I was a politician. You literally give to the residents you serve every single month in the opportunity cost of not doing what you could be doing that could be earning you better and a better lifestyle for your family, for your children. I know that with the many technocrats that I talk to, that is the biggest concern. But here we're talking moral fiber as well. And that is an indictment, I believe, on political parties. We choose who we put forward as candidates for various positions, and we need to ensure that our processes are just that rigorous that we're able to sift through, all of that stuff that you're talking about, and come out with people of good standing, people who can be trusted with such a position. I do think that we need to tighten up our internal processes as political parties.
I mean, interesting you say that, because for many politicians, and you certainly get this impression when you look at some of our politicians out there who've got about 13 Land Rovers, the most expensive watches, that you go into politics for the rewards that you get, the sort of tenders that you can get involved in, the favors that you can get. All of that kind of stuff makes politics in South Africa particularly attractive. And therein lies one of our biggest problems.
Unfortunately, it's not supposed to be that way. No. And I'm one of the few people with the opposite, of that happening to me currently. Part of the reason why I went back to medical practice is because the sacrifice became too much for my family. The 7 years that I didn't earn what I could have earned. I have children, who were in schools, as an example, before I decided to become a politician. They've been gravely affected by the decision because I never took a cent in the 7 years. I've never colluded with business people. I always turned down requests for meetings with service providers because I always knew where it was going to lead. And that's the type of person we should be looking to put in positions of authority and trust with the billions of rands that we're trusted with in those positions. Unfortunately, yes, many South Africans do see it as a gravy train. They see it as an opportunity to get proximity to those tenders. It's not supposed to be that way.
No. One of your biggest failures, and you talk about your relationship with your mum. Tell us about that.
Well, I wouldn't say it was a failure on my part, but I do think that it led to some failures in the earlier years of my life. My mother was very strict. She was extremely strict to a point where at times I would wonder, is she really my mother? She was very harsh. She loved me, and I don't doubt that. But I just think that she had a funny way of showing it.
Why do you think she was so strict? What was behind that?
Firstly, I was an only child. And for her, it was, she better succeed or I have failed. And there was this immense pressure on me to become what she dreamt I would become. And with that, her implementation of her strategy caused me a lot of pain as a child. I don't think she meant to inflict pain. I think she thought she was helping me. But my mom was very, very strict, very, very harsh. And I believe when I got to my teenage years, I did start to rebel. And I believe that with that, I lost a bit of myself. When I look at my matric results.
With the rebellion.
Yeah, as an example, I don't believe that my matric results are a true reflection of my capability, but rather a reflection of the rebellion phase that I was in, where I felt like, well, I've had so many hidings. What else can happen? What could be worse than what I've already experienced? And I think I just started rebelling against this idea. My mom used to wake me up every morning, my matric year, at 4 a.m. to study before I get ready for school. And and she'd go back to sleep. And if she came back and found me sleeping, I could literally have a shoe on any part of my body, or she could slap me anywhere. Or, it was really tough. But like I said, she loved me. So I don't think she did it out of spite. It was really her way of trying to push me to be the best. And my reaction to that, particularly in my teenage years, where I became very naughty, almost a teenage delinquent in high school.
How naughty did you get?
Well, everything that a teenager would do back then. This is in the 90s. So luckily I didn't go into drugs.
A little cigarette.
Cigarettes, alcohol, boys, you name it. I mean, I'd jump over the fence to go clubbing on the night before an exam, for instance.
I can't see you doing that.
And when I look back and I think, what was wrong with you? What had gotten into you? I can only think that really, honestly, I was rebelling because it was tough. It was really hard. But I know she meant well. My mom is an overachiever. She's a workaholic. And yeah, she wanted to reproduce herself in me. And the pressure was just so hard that it almost pushed me over the edge at some point. Luckily, she was wise enough to reach out for help at the right time. And she went to church for that help. And I owe my faith today to that move that she made in her moment of desperation to bring me back in line.
But isn't that powerful that she realized something was happening and she thought, this is what I must do?
Absolutely.
So what's your message there? I mean, my mum is the complete opposite. I used to play a lot of squash, and I was playing and I was winning a lot, and we had to go somewhere, and she leant over and she said, "Please, can you lose? We have to go home." so I had the complete opposite. But we've done okay. So what did you learn from that when it comes to your children and about how you should deal with these little things and how you put yourself into their hearts and minds?
I think I have a problem. I think I'm overcompensating. My eldest will be 21 in July, and he often says to me, "You're more like a friend to us than a mother." And I think it was that thing that I don't want to be as harsh as my mother towards my children, but often I wonder if that's good for them. And so it's about striking the right balance between the friend and the authoritarian, the disciplinarian, and I'm still navigating that space.
Oh, okay. But also parenting has changed so much, hasn't it? I mean, we are a lot more hands-on. I mean, we might not be as strict, but I think we're a lot more hands-on than maybe our parents were. I don't know, maybe not your mum, but we certainly get more involved in stuff that they're doing.
Oh, no, my mom was very involved. My mom was an educator. She was a specialist in geography. My mom did everything with me. Whatever she could do with me, she did with me. I mean, I was often on her school excursions. A lot of the experiences I had as a child of key sites in South Africa were with her. Sure. She did research up to PhD level. I would go with her to collect data, and so she was a very involved parent. I remember as a child at the age of 3, 4, when I was starting school, everything in my room was labeled. The wall was labeled wall. The door was labeled door.
Really?
I was really a project. And, she was very good at managing this project. I do think, though, that, yes, there has been, a change in how we parent these days. I think a lot of us are still trying to find ourselves. Often I have conversations with people I went to high school with, and we compare a lot. We compare ourselves to where our parents were at the time. And in many ways, we feel our parents were better in some respects. We feel that life has evolved so much. It has changed us. That we've got less stability than what our parents had. My parents are still married to each other. Many of us are in our second, third marriages. So a lot has changed, and it's affected the stability of the home. And I think many of us are really trying to navigate complex second and third marriages, because it does get complicated each time you try again with blending families and all of that. So a lot of us are not having a similar experience than what our parents had when we were young.
I mean, do you think, other than that you might become like a doppelganger of each other, a blueprint of your mum? I mean, do you see a lot of yourself now in your mum? And clearly your studiousness hers must have also rubbed off on you.
My dad often says to me that the reason my mom and I fight so much is because we're so alike. So the more I try not to be like her, the more I become like her, except, of course, with my children. There's certainly things that I see in myself that remind me of her. My mom is a workaholic, and a lot of times my office has to slow me down and say, you're going too far. Slow down, have time for the kids, and that sort of thing. And so, yes, in a lot of respects, as a primary role model, as the same-sex parent, she did influence certain aspects of who I am. In terms of housekeeping, as an example, my mom was always behind a computer. She was always working or away for work and so on. I didn't see much of her cleaning the house, doing the laundry, that sort of thing. And as a result, I'm not big on those things. If I don't have a helper, I'm a mess, And so,
Same.
so in a lot of ways, I've become a lot like my mother.
One of your big failures that you put down, or however you would like to spin it, was making the wrong career choice and the subsequent you can tell I'm a presenter, innit? Anyway, changing from engineering to medicine and the loss of time. Then talk us through that.
Yeah, I lost 2 years trying to be an engineer for all the wrong reasons. It's a lesson I always share with young people. Often when we choose careers, we look outwardly before we look internally to see, who am I? what are my strengths, what are my passions, my talents. And I did the same thing. I spoke to my career guidance teacher at the time in high school, whose husband was a chemical engineer. And I asked what her husband was doing for a living because I could see there was good money. She was a teacher part-time and she lived a very good life, lavish lifestyle. And I wanted that as a little girl. And
Fair enough.
Yeah, and she said to me, my husband's a chemical engineer. He owns his own company. And I said, well, that's the one I want. And she started helping me to become like her husband. And after 2 years of trying, I was miserable. I hated it. I realized this was not me at all. And it was only after seeing an educational psychologist, going through a battery of tests and having the right conversations that I realized that my approach was all wrong. I love to share the story because we all want a lavish lifestyle. We all want the good life, and often we look at what pays the most and we want to squeeze ourselves into that mold, but it's not necessarily what we're best at. And what I find is that when you find what you're best at, what you were born to do, you excel naturally without much effort. And it is my desire to see many people discover who they were born to be.
Okay, so let's bring in Dr. Thabo Nisi, who apparently knows you well and would like to ask you something about your career path. Go ahead, Doctor.
Hello.
Hello, we've got you online. What's your question?
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Mpho. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Thabo.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Mpho is very good with people's skills and so on, and I think where she has worked as a doctor, patients tend to love it too much. Now, my question is, would she like to go back to medicine or would like to do other things? How does she feel? What is her intention going forward? Because patients are crying for her.
I have to give a bit of background. So Dr. Thabo Nisi is currently head of family medicine at the One Military Hospital. And once upon a time, I partnered with him in private practice in Potchefstroom after his patients asked for a female doctor. And it was a trial, having known Thabo from med school, that's where we met. Thabo and I became like brother and sister. He's also an only child like me. So, we often borrowed each other's parents and so on. And after that short trial, I said to Thabo, I don't think I can do this because I can't do it for money. I take too long with patients because I enjoy the patient interaction and I want to go as deep as I possibly can. And it's not practical, and I think it's from that point of view that he's asking you back there, what happens now? I'm in a theatre setting. I don't do patient consultations, so I work with a team, a neurosurgeon and an orthopedic surgeon. I'm about to start working with a vascular surgeon. They would do the outpatient visits. They would do those consultations. I only appear in theatre when we go in to do the procedure. And of course, I would interact with the patient as we're wheeling them into the theatre and as we're wheeling them out, etc. But I do think that it's a better model for me. It's more practical. It's to the point. We go in, we do the procedure, we get out. So I think that's working for me. In terms of my future plans, and Thabo will know this very well, that I'm a very spiritual being. I'm always spirit-led in my decision-making. And all indications suggest that I will go back to medicine sooner than I had thought. So I'm actually preparing, not necessarily to wind down, but for a better re-entry into politics. I believe that I was not prepared the last time, not in terms of my capabilities, but just in terms of ensuring that my family will be taken care of while I'm in politics.
Okay, so and where are you going to go? Which party would you join?
Well, I'm still a member of the Democratic Alliance, so I've not resigned from the DA.
Okay, so I was being a little bit presumptuous. Sorry.
Yes.
Sneaky way of trying to find out from you. Are you going to be joining your husband? Okay, you're going to stay in the DA, but what, to what end? I mean, you wanted to lead. That didn't work for you. So where do you land?
I've not given up on that aspiration. I do still believe that there is room for a leader such as myself in the Democratic Alliance, and I'll continue to pursue that. I think it's important. I believe that the DA is the only party currently in South Africa that's ready to govern. truly so, and I'm not being biased. And unfortunately, politics is about governing. And so I don't see alternatives, and that's why I'm still in the DA. But I do have a concern about our inability to connect with the majority of South Africans and to win over their hearts and to win their trust. And I believe that I can make that happen. I believe that I can be the bridge between the Democratic Alliance and the majority of South Africans, and I believe that we can have a better run country after that.
You got into some trouble in the past over comments you made about Israel. The DA is getting lambasted from certain corners about their stance about Israel, painting over graffiti in Cape Town, which was rather a strange move considering, freedom of speech and how they positioned themselves in the past. Where do you stand on that position now?
Well, the DA's position has always been my position. We believe in a two-state solution and peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians. And I believe that's still the position of the DA. And it was my position even back then. I think I did explain that my comments were misconstrued because, I'm a mother. When I stand before Penyo, I say, Penyo, I love you. When I stand before Tapelo, I say, Tapelo, I love you. I don't say, Tapelo, I love you and I love your brother too. Or, and that's really what happened. I was addressing a particular audience about the city's disposition towards that particular constituency. And I didn't talk about other constituencies, but you can't win when it comes to the Middle East. And that was the biggest lesson I learned out of that. And so, it's still my position today.
We've got a call from Monica. It's just saying I want to congratulate her for her strength. And, okay, Monica, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Monica. Go ahead.
Yes, Mpho, how are you? And I just want to congratulate you for your strength. You pulled it through. Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I just want to find out when you say it was not only because you are a woman, because there's been this thing in South Africa that if you are a woman, there is triple oppression. Women and being black. But maybe it was because of other people, there was power, misogyny, and that really made you to get out of DA.
Monica, firstly, thank you for your kind words. Secondly, I'm not out of the DA. I'm still a member of the DA. And like I've just said, I do plan on still pursuing the position of leadership of the party. I believe that there's room for that. And I believe that at the right time, it will happen. I don't believe that I was ousted because I'm a woman. There was a lot of power play. There were too many political parties involved in governing. At some point, we had 10 parties under my mayorship, which, as you can imagine, with few MMC positions and with the Troika also being so limited, the mayor, the speaker, and the chief whip, there were only so many positions going around, and people always wanted more, they wanted better, and of course the opposition used that to sway some of our partners towards them, and that's what eventually happened when parties like the Patriotic Alliance got a better offer from the ANC. They left us, and that's how I got ousted. I believe that had I been male, the same narrative would have played out. I don't believe that it would have played out differently because of my gender.
Let's talk about your term as mayor and how you see that as a setback and what you learned from that.
Not necessarily my term, but how it ended. I would have loved to have a 5-year term. We inherited a broken city, firstly, and we were not going to turn it around in 14 months. We definitely needed more time. I think we needed 2 terms even. And so, quite sad how things turned out. A failure not on my part, a failure of the system, a failure of even just our legal framework and its immaturity or lack of adequate development to protect our residents and citizens from instability. And I say this because in countries such as Denmark, who've had coalitions for decades, you've got laws in place that prevent what happened to me from happening. You're not allowed in Denmark to unseat a sitting mayor. Once you sit in that position, you have to see it through. In fact, one former mayor who addressed a training of DA mayors that I attended said, you can't even decide that you want to quit. You would have to be sick to be allowed to stop working as mayor.
And no, sorry, real sort of quantifiable reason, right? I mean, you can't say, like Peter, maybe, you've been badly behaved or whatever it is. And I'm sure obviously people came up with much ammunition, but that must be hard to counter.
You don't need any valid reason. In fact, the fewer reasons you put in your motion of no confidence, the more likely that it will succeed. Because the more you put reasons, then you get caught up in technicalities and your motion might not succeed. And that's the sad thing. I believe that we were a great administration. I believe that we were turning the city around. We could already sense the change in trajectory. Residents could sense it. They tell me every day I run into them. And so, no, it's not a motion of no confidence because we were incapable or we were not focused on doing the job. We were actually doing great, and I had a great team working with me.
Okay, you say you were doing great. You say you had a great team. It didn't work. So what can work? Do we have to grow up? I mean, what sort of impact does this have on the elections just around the corner?
So firstly, it's the legal framework, and you'll be aware that the Democratic Alliance has tabled a few bills in Parliament to address that, dealing with the frequency of motions of no confidence, for example. I mean, I faced a few before I was ultimately ousted and so on. So yes, definitely a look at what we can do to tighten our laws to protect our residents. But yes, we do need to grow up. I will say that because I've been in meetings where a lot of politicians were petty, a lot of politicians were self-serving, and they forgot what we're about. We now celebrating 30 years of democracy, and I miss what we had in 1994. Our focus was on the right things. Our focus was on building a rainbow nation and driving redress and making sure that South Africans are united behind this vision. I'm not seeing us being united. We're more fragmented than ever because everyone wants to be president. Everyone wants to be leader of a new formation, and we see new formations daily. With each new formation, I just see us become more and more fragmented as a people, and I wonder how we hope to achieve what we hope to achieve.
Isaac wants to ask you something. Isaac's on the line. Go ahead.
Good afternoon to you, Mpho, and how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Isaac.
I'm fine. Yeah, Mpho, it's like we miss you so much here in the city of Joburg as security officers, And you are the only one mayor that who once engaged with us and knows our grievances, and you are about to fix our problems. But now, unfortunately, you left the office. So my question to you, Mpho, is if ever you were still in the office, I mean, what would you have been done to the security? Because as we are still on the lower level and we are not being considered, whatever the position we are, because we are suffering in all those sort of things.
Okay, thank you for that.
Isaac, yes, you're right. We did meet together with the unions, the city manager, and we had put together a delegation to particularly focus on driving issues raised by security officers. There were many issues, issues of PPE, tools of trade, and so many other things. And my office was driving that work. We would have continued. We would have made sure that you really experienced service with pride because you're being supported by an administration that understands your own requirements, but also your need to feel safe. I think one of the biggest concerns raised was the lack of safety. There were lots of attacks by criminal syndicates. We saw a few security guards being killed, and a lot of you felt unsafe, and we were working on all of that. We had engaged national government, we had engaged law enforcement across the different tiers of government, and we were really addressing your issues. And I'm sorry that we had to leave the way we left, but I'm hopeful that you will once again have an administration that continues with those plans.
Tell us about what you saw when it came to abandoned buildings. I mean, it's a massive building, a massive problem, not only in Johannesburg, but in other parts of the country. We saw the Rand Water chief who was killed. Now we've got executive under protection. I mean, is this something that was happening in your time? What does it suggest is going on?
Well, there could be any number of reasons, and I've been mulling over it. I don't have the facts. I can only speculate. Yes, as politicians, we were constantly under threat. Executives were constantly under threat. We've had to give some officials in the city VIP protection at some point or another because their lives were threatened for some reason or other. So yes, it has become that dangerous to work in that space. But there's also illicit economies. Sometimes officials and politicians involve themselves themselves in things they should not involve themselves in. But sometimes it's because you're standing for what is right and people need to remove you because you're an obstacle. I mean, there could be so many reasons these kinds of things happen. As it pertains to abandoned buildings, yes, that remained a key program that we were driving, following up on the 2016 administration's program where we were encouraging private developers to take over these buildings. We continued with that program in my office. I had regular engagements with the JPC, the Development Planning Department, to look at how we could fast track the handing over of these buildings to private developers. We were assisting them with approvals and so on. So we had really streamlined functions to make sure that we hand over as many as possible. One hurdle that we still had, which I was at the tail end of my mayorship working with the Minister of Home Affairs to address, was the need for temporary emergency accommodation. So in order for us to take back these buildings, we need to provide temporary emergency accommodation. A lot of our buildings are hijacked, and the vast majority of the people in those buildings are undocumented migrants. And unfortunately, immigration in Johannesburg did not have adequate capacity to be with us on every single raid and to process every single undocumented migrant. And that was the conversation between myself and the minister. The minister was quite willing. He was agreeable. I really enjoyed, and I was excited. I remember coming out of that meeting because I saw we could finally claim back more buildings because we then had realistic targets in terms of how much emergency accommodation we had to provide.
And I should imagine listening to music take you away and take you into your land of, I was going to say fantasy, but it could well be reality, where we see you as a leader of the DA. So you sort of hinted at that. And Miriam Makeba and Nina Simone is one of them.
From the west down to the east, any day now, anyway now, I shall be released. Standing next
Beautiful
to
song.
me.
All right. Sadly, we're going to have to let you go. Any predictions for the elections? You have 20 seconds. And what final word of advice are you going to give all of us?
I'd love to sit here and say that opposition parties are united enough to oust the ANC and give an alternative government to South Africans. I do not have that confidence, having been in that mix and seeing the mudslinging and how everybody was trying to upstage everyone else instead of working together. It's quite sad. So it does look to me like we will end up with the ANC at the helm yet again in coalition with another party, because definitely the ANC will fall way below what they got in the last election. There's predictions they'll fall below 40%. There's new developments daily, so things keep changing with the new MK party formation, for example, with a lot of the offshoots from the ANC itself, with Ace Magashule and so many others. Between now and elections, there could be a lot of various other changes, but I do believe that, unfortunately, we're likely to end up with an ANC government in coalition with some other parties.
Dr. Mpho Phalatse, thank you so much for being with us. That was a wonderful conversation, and we wish you, Dr. Phalatse, the best of luck going forward in whatever sphere you end up in.
Thank you so much.
702.
The upside of failure.
Sometimes failure is the foundation of greatest success stories.